welcome back to the She Can platform, where women lead by example. And why is that so important to have role models and mentors telling their stories? Because it's easier to be what you can see. Welcome to Alexandra Mousavizadeh. Welcome to She Can. You are the co-founder and CEO of Evident Insights, which is a research company that benchmarks and tracks AI adoption across the financial services sector. You provide data-driven comparisons on the AI performance on both capabilities and AI use cases and outcomes. You're originally an economist from Denmark. You were a partner at Tortoise Media, where you created the Responsibility 100 Index and the Global AI Index. So you really specialize in index creation using data to build benchmarks that rank nations and companies on key social and technological issues. Alexandra, tell us a bit more about your journey first. How did you get to where you are today? How did you get to set up Evident Insights? Why was that important to you? What's your big vision going forwards?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here, telling the story of Evident and the journey. Maybe to go back, because actually the journey is come full circle. I studied, as you mentioned, at the University of Copenhagen. I did economics, mathematics, and did my thesis in game theory, which was a little bit unusual back in the day, but has come full circle because a lot of AI today is based on game theoretical principles. So on the academic side, it has come full circle. But the red thread in my career has actually been benchmarking and index creation. When I graduated, I moved to New York to take up a position as sovereign risk analyst at Moody's, where I became and spent a lot of time as a Russia analyst, and then broadened out to Central Asia, then also covered the Middle East. I covered Africa, covered countries in Europe, but it's all seen through the prism of the risk of default of nations. And to assess that, you have to build an index where you compare the risk of default among their peers and among other countries. So who is most at risk of defaulting versus others? And so building an index looking at future economic performance was, I think, a fantastic way to organize the world and organize one's thinking, because it's data-led. It is comparing apples to apples and giving a good sense of sort of the comparative strength and weaknesses of nations. Then I moved to London from New York and took up a position at Morgan Stanley, doing very much the same job, just internally. So assessing the risk of nations defaulting to better provide information for bankers and traders on whether holding currency or instruments in Russia or Ethiopia or Germany or Bosnia, for that matter, which ones were most at risk, and how should the bank trade and hold instruments. And then, as you said, I then had a role in a different rating agency where it was also setting up the methodologies for nations and for corporates on the risk of default. And then stepped in as head of intelligence at Tortoise Media here in London, where I was a founding partner. And actually, the first index that we created back in 2018 was the Global AI Index, which was the first index to measure nations on the strength of their AI ecosystems. So the debate was very much focused on the AI strategies that were emerging from the countries, and working out who was leading on certain technologies, who was fast following, and sort of who was moving into the space of AI and emerging technologies and quantum as well. And so it was looking at the US versus China, the UK versus Canada, Germany, France, Israel, Singapore, South Korea, and so on, who all had strategies to really work out what where to position the emerging technology dollars, if you like, in the nation, and what to focus on. But then it also raised the question of smaller nations, nations like Denmark and others, sort of as a smaller nation, what do you do if you've got less dollars to spend? So where do you focus your efforts? So that really brought us down into the engine room of how to measure something as nebulous as AI. How do you measure, what it is, how do you define it, but also what are the components that are needed for AI development and adoption? And when it became very much a question that also was among the questions at the CEO level and board level of big businesses such as banks and insurance companies, healthcare companies, and manufacturing, on looking at the spend that they had conducted over the years on AI and emerging technology, and trying to work out how they compared vis-a-vis their peers. And that's how Evident emerged 2 years ago, when we established the first public ranking of banks on their AI adoption and AI capabilities. And we are now starting to roll out across other sectors such as insurance, payment platforms, then we'll go into manufacturing, we'll go into healthcare. And hopefully over the next couple of years, we'll be covering many, many sectors and able to provide this benchmarking on the capabilities of something as transformative and important as AI.
Alexandra, what is it that is so important about AI, and why is it so important that these sectors are fast in this race of this evolution of this incredible technology that we now have to embrace?
Well, it is probably the most transformative technology of our lifetime. It will completely change the way that we live, the way we work, how we organize ourselves as societies, and also solve really big problems that we're facing, whether it's health, whether it's climate, and also have an enormous impact on economic growth going forward. So the importance of being able to adopt this at speed, but also safely, is essentially existential. So what we do is that we create transparency by this index puts everyone on the map, and creates and forces transparency of what the adoption journey really is, and then who's leading in that journey, and then looking at the best practices and what the leading companies have done in order to get the AI adoption incorporated and AI implemented in their organization. So that not only can you see what the best practices are, but also if you're about to embark on your own AI strategy as a business, you can learn from the leaders, and that's what this index does. So it provides the businesses with the information that they're seeking in terms of where they position vis-a-vis their peers, but also for others to see, what can we learn from that journey that they have been on.
So you're showing best in class. You're basically showing AI role models and how they did it so others can do it as well. From what I can understand is that North America is definitely leading in this adoption. There seems to be JP Morgan, that is more of a tech company than a bank by now. Talk us through a little bit about the landscape. Who are the leaders for now, and how did they get to this leading position in the AI adoption?
Yes, as you know, for now, we're just looking through the prism of the ranking of the banks.
Yeah.
And when you look through the prism of the ranking of the banks, and we measure so far the biggest banks in North America and Europe, the North American banks are definitely ahead. And we were interested to understand why that was. And when you look at the common denominators or the common themes of the leading banks, as you mentioned, JP Morgan is number one. You've got Capital One is in the second place. Royal Bank of Canada is third. Then you have Wells Fargo, and up there you also have Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and BNY and Citi. And the common denominator of the leading banks is that they started early and they considered themselves that it was necessary to shift the mindset from being a bank to essentially become a tech company. And so what does that mean exactly? When you listen to Jamie Dimon's first mention of the bank becoming a tech company, or JP Morgan becoming a tech company back in 2018, he said we really need to think about how these tech companies are organized and learn, because that means that, to become an AI first business, we need to reorganize our mindset, our structures, the way we operate, the way we think about AI as a very specific technology, and how we onboard all of that expertise. So what he did from the right at the start was set up a research lab back in 2018, and he hired the brilliant Manuela Veloso, who he had picked out of Carnegie Mellon, to lead the research lab, which is now 250 person strong research lab that just focuses on AI research, emerging technology research, that they then can use across the bank, because they're very much on the front foot of what is happening in the AI innovation space, but also how the bank can use things like deep learning and synthetic data and natural language processing, and so on. So as and when the bank comes across use cases where that kind of expertise is needed, you have it to hand. And that's what the big tech companies do. Then there's also a big race on talent. And so by having a research lab, having reorganizing the mindset to be very innovative and AI focused, you're also able to attract the best AI talent. And you can see that from the index. They are head and shoulders above the rest of the sector in terms of not just the volume of AI talent, but also the quality of the AI talent. The researchers with PhDs that are submitting papers that have high H index scores, that present at academic conferences and so on. And that might seem like an odd thing for a bank to do, but actually it is the straightest path to understand what's going on the front end of development, but also the best funnel for talent. And so many banks have then followed in the footsteps of JP Morgan and set up research labs and shifted the mindset to accommodate AI talent. So allowing activity on open source and GitHub, and encouraging the AI talent to build and file patents and so on. And that has put them in a great position of strength. So when AI now is sort of picking up speed, and in terms of sort of acceleration of capabilities, the bank is very prepared from a mindset perspective, because they have the expertise, across the bank and down the business lines, of being able to identify how to use, Gen AI. And in a minute, we have got agentic AI, and then we've got quantum. And so that is what the leading banks have done, is that shifting that mindset, reorganizing the bank, attracting the AI talent, doubling down on sort of innovation, but also being quite visible in what the strategy is, because shareholders are starting to ask questions, not only of the leading banks, but also of other companies. What are you doing with all of this AI spend? The big banks spend somewhere between 10 and 17 billion a year on technology, and a bigger and bigger proportion of that is on AI. So shareholders are rightfully asking, show us the return on investment. So you're now seeing the beginning of banks being much more vocal on what is that return on investment, and that is only going to increase. So banks and other organizations starting to get really organized about being AI first, being organized around how to identify what use cases to go for and how to measure impact is starting to grow. So we're seeing that change, and this year has been a year of particular change. And we just, as you might have seen, released the 2024 edition. That's the third edition of our index. That was 2 weeks ago, where we could see that the sea change in activity had taken place over the last 12 months, and a lot of shifts in the index. And that's really interesting to follow. But again, still the North American banks leading. We are seeing some European banks pick up pace and sort of moving forward, and sort of really taking a leaf out of the North American banks in terms of that mindset, and the mindset of being more like a tech company, and thinking about the reorganization along those lines.
Alexandra, you've been talking about how important it is to have the best talent come and work for you. Now, we know that the AI industry is really predominantly male. There's 26% women. So talk us through a little bit about what is the significance of women having to go into that industry, to be regarded as talent, to be part of the teams. What does the future look like?
Well, the gender balance is not good in AI. It's very male dominated. graduates coming out of pure mathematics or computer science or engineering or physics or quantum computing are dominated by men. So I think that the most important thing one can do, and that comes down to policy, is really encouraging women to take up these areas and promote that at a very young age. And that is something that has been talked about for a long time as a sort of as a policy priority in many countries, both across Europe and also the US. But it is really important, because otherwise the pipeline of women is going to be quite small, and therefore it is quite difficult for businesses to create that gender balance that we know that they really want to. It is something that is on the forefront of the minds of the businesses that we talk to, trying to create that gender balance as best they can, given that the pipeline is quite unequal. So the most important thing is to create that the funnel of female scientists and mathematicians, because that will very much help having that gender balance. Gender balance is important not only in the AI space. It's important at a business level. It's important to have gender balance all across the businesses. But of course, it is really important to have in the science and technologies as well, because as we build the models, we do need to have the input from a representation of the societies that we live in.
Alexandra, so what do you feel like being a woman in this industry, being a woman mathematician, a woman economist who's been in this, who's been indexing things for decades?
Well, it's a very exciting place to be in. The debate is taking place at two levels. One is the sort of the race for technology supremacy at a company level. So you're seeing the race taking place between the Google and Microsoft, between OpenAI and Anthropic, between all of the developers out there. That race is taking place, and there is this sense of winner take all. Then there's also the race at a geopolitical level. And we're just at the morning of the US elections, where it looks like Trump sadly has won. And what that knock-on effect is going to have on, women is not great, I don't think, but also for the geopolitical race on AI technology and emerging technology. It's very important to have collaboration globally, that we share best practices, that we share knowledge. And with the Trump presidency, that is definitely going to be in the reverse, is what I would expect. Yeah. And putting up the walls between the US and China that have in the past had a lot of collaboration and sharing and talent moving back and forth between China, the US, and Europe. And that, I think, probably will come to a halt.
I'm very grateful that you talk about this, Alexandra, because yes, it is a historic day today. It's potentially a really tragic day for women, for technology, for bridging the gaps, for trying to bridge the divides that we see in the world today. So I'm very happy that you have mentioned this. What does that mean for your industry? We know what that means for women. We know that we will live in a less safe world, because instead of bridging the divides, he's going to put up walls, and that will be a serious challenge for all of us worldwide.
Yes, it's a real concern you mentioned, but on technology in particular, as I said before, I think that the advancement and the safe advancement of technology is through collaboration, and that the nations should be, and has been in the past, on the path of drawing closer together, collaborating between, China and Europe and the US. And the outcomes of that collaboration will be much stronger than the outcomes of the walls being put up and barriers for collaboration and sharing of insight and so on is just going to slow us down and probably make it a much less safe trajectory that we're on. I mean, if you go back and think about how the team around Oppenheimer back in the early 20s and looking at the breakthrough that they achieved in 1927, I think that was in Göttingen, was really pulling together quantum physicists from all around the world. There was Niels Bohr, there was Oppenheimer, there were a lot of talent from across Europe that got together and really sort of put their heads together and thought about how we advance and how we sort of solve these difficult technical conundrums that had been been thought about for decades, but it was then that they had the breakthrough. I mean, that's the nuclear weapon, and we can of course talk about the safety of that. But all I'm saying is that it is with collaboration, it is with shared understanding of where the technology is and sharing of ideas that we move forward. So with the Trump win, right, those walls are going to go up. With the Trump win, that's probably going to slow down the innovations in the world. And the innovations, of course, as I said before, are so important for drug discovery, for what we can solve of the big problems going forward on climate change and the solutions on climate, but also just on the sort of the thing I focus on, which is on AI and the sort of breakthroughs that we hope to see on that in that area, on generative AI and agentic AI, and sort of where that's taking us in the future, because that is also enormously important for sort of our productivity and the way that we work. So I'm very sad to see a Trump win today in the United States, but also just internally, I would say. For the things that he's going to be supporting, he's very close to Elon Musk. There was a bill in California that Elon Musk was supporting that would have been very bad for AI development in terms of the way it was structured. It would very much have favored the big platforms and Elon Musk in particular. And if Trump listens to that, then I think we're going to see regulation that is not going to be a good outcome for the development and the safety going forward of the AI technology.
Yeah. Alexandra, thank you very much for that. Let's get back to you a little. What do you feel are your top qualities that really serve you every day in being at the forefront, indexing AI across the financial sector and then also other industries?
Well, I think sort of what excites me every day is that you're in a subject in an area that is constantly changing, and the interesting aspects that it opens for us as a society, and being deep into the details of how that is developing and what it will unlock just keeps you very hungry every day. It keeps you very curious, right? The first thing I do is open my phone in the morning and seeing what is going on in that space, because it always comes with the question of, oh my goodness, then we're going to be able to do these new things. And so I think that just it's almost like you get pulled by the tide and of something that's constantly changing, and that is really, really interesting. And so being very curious about that is something that I have with me when I wake up in the morning, the curiosity of what's going on, but also being pulled along by the changes in that technology. So that's something that serves me. I'm lucky to be in a space that is so interesting, but also then building a company. We are a new company. We're 2 years in, building a team and working out what are the values of our company. What people do we want to have in our business around us to be growing something that we think is obviously very important, setting the standards for how to measure AI, forcing through transparency. Also takes a team that needs to be very passionate and dedicated to the topic. So that's something that I spend my time thinking about, sort of what team are we growing? Who are we in the world? What is our vision? What footprint do we want to have today, tomorrow, and in 5 years' time? So that's also really exciting to wake up to and think about all the time, sort of what does that team look like? And as we're growing and raising our Series A and maybe down the line a Series B, and as we go from a team from 10 to 25 to 55, I think it's very important to keep that in the center of your mind, the sort of the people around you, and as we're building this, what does that team makeup look like?
Alexandra, so how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, I think one of the things that we and I say we because I have a brilliant co-founder, Annabelle Ailes, and we talk a lot about the values of the business, looking at we want to be excellent. We want to have extreme attention to detail. We focus very much on experimentation and having an environment where we can test and try things out. That we're very collaborative. Everything's very open. So there's everyone's on. I know many companies do that, but we are sort of extreme in the way that we use Slack for everything, and everything is very open. Things are, discussed. We bring everyone around the table when we have bigger questions that we're trying to solve. We listen to everyone. So I think the leadership style from both myself and my co-founder is one of being very present, being around the table, being very collaborative, but also wanting excellence, and we work very hard. but I think that also showing the sort of the pace with which we move is very satisfying for the whole team, because there's also, we put a lot in, but I think we also see that we get a lot of results and we get a lot out as well.
Alexandra, so what do you feel? What are the skills and talents needed in the next 10 years and beyond? What tips would you give to our younger generation?
I think that is it is an interesting question, because it changes actually from, if you had asked me 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said computer science. I think it's a good idea to go into computer science. It seemed like that was the obvious place to focus. And it's not that it isn't, because I would always, it's always going to be relevant. But I think what I'm learning today is that because AI technology is changing so rapidly, and now we've got generative AI, that actually I think it's a real understanding of just a broad understanding of technology, and the way to get that is actually to have a strong mathematical background. So math is the basis of so much. Technology is going to change rapidly, but the common theme behind it all is the mathematics. So I think if you can, even if you don't find mathematics easy, do go in, take a course in it, choose it as a subject if you can, depending on how old you are. But if you have an opportunity to choose it at a sort of a high school level, at a university level, and even after, take it. It just gives you the understanding of the basis of this technology. But then I would say it is also important to have other skills. The interpretation of the technology, the understanding of that, good writing skills, good analytical skills, good communication skills. I mean, we see that all of that is as necessary as ever. So I don't think that actually there's going to be a seismic shift in 10 years from now. It's only going to be people with certain backgrounds and skills. I think actually, as we see this evolving, the skills of communication and writing and leadership and building of businesses and really understanding the needs of businesses as they go forward is going to be just as important as it is today. So I would lean into that as well. And so I would just say, get off your phones, do a lot of reading, put some math in there if you can. Conceptual understanding of concepts is always very important, because the concepts and the world that we're going to be in is only going to be ever more complex. And so really understanding, conceptual understanding is also very important. So I know that's quite a broad answer, but I really do believe that is certainly what I'm advising my sons to do.
Alexandra, so what do you feel are your challenges? What are the challenges that you face in your world?
I think the main challenge that I or any person building a business is always being on the front foot of what the demand will be going forward. So you've got to be really on the front foot of seeing where the dynamics, in my case, the dynamics of the technology is going, but also what it means for businesses. So the challenge is always to be thinking and trying to think 1 or 2 years ahead. So where will the need be? And then trying to figure out how do you fill that need? From our perspective, we are a data-led business that provides insights based on the data. So it's not consultancy, it's not advisory, it's data-led insights. And so we have got to think about how do we change and evolve what we track from a data perspective that will meet the needs of the businesses, so they are equipped to make better decisions, to be able to see where they stand against their peers, because where that was last year is different from where it is today, and it will be different tomorrow, and it will be different 4 years from now. So the challenge is that we've constantly got to think about where is this going in the future. So I would say that is probably our biggest challenge, is to be really solidly thinking ahead for our clients.
Yeah. Alexandra, and what would you be most proud of to date?
Well, the building of the business is a real pride, right? It pulls together every strand of what I've done in my career, and it pulls it together into this full circle, is where we started. A life and a career in indexing, a background in mathematics, a keen interest on sort of tech trends and politics and geopolitics, and a real passion for the importance of what benchmark and an index does for the help in sort of our societies, because and sort of the focus, and helps focus the mind for businesses and nations, because there's nothing like what an index does to make people sit up. They want to know where they are on the ranking, and they want to know why. And if it's built properly, it has the right behavioral change nudges built into the index, and it really helps bring people to the table and to nudge changes that will have positive impacts for the businesses that uses them, but also for society as a whole. So building a business that is based on an index, based on a ranking, is something I'm extremely proud of.
Yeah, congratulations, Alexandra. What are your plans and goals for the next 5 years? You've mentioned there'll be a seed round or a Series A round of raising capital. Talk us through that.
Yes, so the plans for the next 5 years for the business is that we're going to expand and scale what we're doing. And that means that we're going to be moving from, we do financial services, and then we're going to expand across other sectors. So we're going to be looking at healthcare and sort of the role of AI in healthcare, and how we can help and create more transparency there in that sector. And we're going to do the same for manufacturing and for retail and for supply chain businesses, and eventually cover as most sectors in the world, and become the global standard benchmark for AI adoption, and be the main reference point for how to think about AI adoption in businesses. So that's the vision. And to get there, we will be raising a Series A in the near future, and probably maybe 2.5 or 3 years down the line, we'll probably be raising a Series B that will get us to enable us to cover all of these sectors globally. And so that's the vision for the next 5 years.
Alexandra, I'll be hoping to talk to you again then, because as we know, it's more difficult for women entrepreneurs to raise capital. So we'll be really interested at TCAN how that journey is going, and we wish you all the best. What would you like our listeners to take away from your story?
I think that when I set up Evident, and there was no public benchmark on businesses on AI adoption, it just didn't exist. It was to feel brave enough to go and do it because you believe in your idea. So I think that if there's anything I can advise and suggest, is that believe in your ideas, trust your gut, and go do it.
Alexandra, I'm so grateful for this conversation. We've covered so much important stuff, And I'm very grateful for you to hold that big vision, to have a co-founder, to be two women in a very male-dominated industry, for building best in class, for showing transparency and collaboration is really important going forwards. So thank you so much for being such a great role model.
Thank you for having me.